to me, one of the real pictures that I'm going to remember of this game, and Duck fans will enjoy it too, is late in the third quarter, one of the South Florida defensive linemen came running off the field about 10 yards and then staggered and fell face down on the turf. And that's pretty much what the Oregon offensive line did to a really fine defensive line of South Florida. Now, how could South Florida play so well and then play so poorly in this game? I think probably they took the Ducks for granted a little bit. In that way, I think Duck fans can have a lot of satisfaction of here's another case of a former Big 12 coach, Jim Hevlett, coach of South Florida, getting a rude awakening to the quality of coaching in the Pac-10. Bob Stoops, who he coached with at Kansas State, and also Mike Stoops, brother of Bob, all coached together, and when they all had their first experience with the Pac-10, they downgraded the competition based on their idea that the coaching was superior in that conference. I think this day at least, Coach Hevlett knows that, hey, the Pac-10 is for real. And you know, this team, Oregon Ducks, looked like they did when Dennis Dixon was playing. And what a great testimony to Justin Roper as an athlete, but even more so the coaching expertise of offensive coordinator and quarterback coach Chip Kelly. He had a month to get him prepared, and wow, what a difference between the UCLA and even the Oregon State game. He played well and was obviously the trigger man to some great things. Now, South Florida was set to stop Jonathan Stewart, but after a while, because the Ducks were able to spread the field, they moved the ball around with some misdirections. The fly sweep that they stole from Oregon State served them well. They got Florida back on their heels a little bit, and the thing that Oregon, it doesn't matter if you have 9 guys in the box, if your 7 or 8 guys are doing a good job of blocking and Jonathan Stewart can break a tackle, which he surely can, it doesn't matter how many you have in the box. And ultimately, Oregon's strength up front offensively really turned the tide. I will also say that coming into the game, South Florida's wide receivers were decent but unheralded. Their running backs, their best running back was their quarterback. He was held to 40 yards and a concussion today, so the Ducks got after him. And the one thing about the Ducks have been practicing for this game, the Duck defense has, for 12 games this year. They go against their offense day after day in practice. They've had to defend Dennis Dixon. Grote is a good quarterback. He's certainly not a Dennis Dixon. And they were prepared. They showed that solid tackling by the defense. I was really impressed with. They really came to play. If you wanted to look for some things they didn't do well, they obviously made some poor decisions that cost them 15-yard penalties. On one drive, they had 3 penalties that helped South Florida keep the drive going. It ended up in a touchdown. At one point, you just wanted to tear your hair out and say that the biggest thing the Ducks had going against them was their defense, and not necessarily with how they were playing, but how they were thinking. They took some really poor penalties, but they tackled really well. They were very well prepared. They knew where South Florida was going, and when they didn't, they had guys in the vicinity that made them pay for it. 5 turnovers in the second half, 2 for touchdowns. We know how happy that makes Nick Aliotti. The defense, they did a wonderful job. I saw on one play an Oregon defenders tipped the ball twice before it was intercepted by a defensive back. And what that says is we've got lots of guys going for the ball, they're around the ball, they're alert. Defensive line blocked at least 3 passes at the line of scrimmage. The defensive line played so much better than they did against the Beavers. Credit Michael Gray, the defensive coach, to that. However, at one point they did look like last year's team when they got guys lining up offsides on a 3rd and 2, gives them a first down. On one play, we have a blow to the head and then a late hit, and so you don't excuse those. Even if you win, it doesn't excuse those. Those are things that the coaching staff will use to teach for next spring. You know, listening to the guys on the radio afterwards, they were just so excited going through the roster about who's coming back and what it looks like, and what a difference a win in a bowl game makes. To think ahead with some hope. I thought Justin Roper played really well, but I know there's some talent there to compete with him, and my expectation is that Chip Kelly, given a spring ball and given another fall camp, is going to get somebody who's going to be as effective as Dennis Dixon was for the Ducks this season. And make no mistake, today Justin Roper was as effective for the Ducks as Dennis Dixon was all year round. Threw 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, he was not sacked, he made good decisions by and large, and you know, that's with some talent and some really good coaching. Credit Mike Bellotti. You know, I read a column in one of the Portland papers where one of the columnists was accusing the Ducks of quitting. And I would just say this, that take a look at what we did and you tell me if we quit. Oregon had no quit in them, although it was disappointing how they ended up losing the last 3 games. Nobody quit, especially on the defense. The offense, you know, had their problems, but they didn't make excuses. And it's been a great year. Could have been a lot better, but this is a big win, and it makes you feel a lot better about what those bad spots towards the end.
That's great. That's enough.
Blah, 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 blah.
Why would I ask for more? That's it.
And I'm going to smoke a. Well, the extent to which the Ducks dominated, particularly the offensive line against the defense, was that in the first half the Ducks ran it 15 times for 98 yards, an average of 6.5. South Florida ran the ball 10 times for -2. So just from a first down standpoint, the Ducks were often in short yardage situations, a lot like the Washington game. South Florida had a lot of second and long, and if it weren't for Grothy's kind of key plays with his feet and throwing a couple passes, the game wouldn't even have been close at halftime. In the second half, the Ducks ran it 12 times for 92 yards on first down, an average of 7.8. South Florida ran it 7 times for 19 yards. Really, the game was pretty much over at that time. So in the end, the Ducks had over 300 yards rushing against a team that had been giving up less than 100 per game, and it allowed only a running back over 100 once or twice the whole season. You know, I don't think South Florida was prepared for the physicality of Oregon's offensive line. Give them a lot of credit, because there were a lot of guys from South Florida tapping their helmets, wanting to come off the field, and there were a lot of guys carried off the field too, and that's kind of an indication of a physical stomping, if you will. So credit to Ducks. Nick Aliotti said a really neat thing at the end of the game. He said we had great practices. We didn't have anybody late for curfew. We didn't have anybody do anything wrong. They had a minimum of academic disruption, and we've seen what that can do to teams in bowl games. Credit that. Those are little things behind the scenes, despite the thing, or in addition to what's going on in the football field. If those things aren't happening, the discipline of your program, academically, on and off the field, you're certainly never going to field a good football team. And credit Bellotti, his assistants, the coach, and applaud the players for kind of having a heart-to-heart last year in the spring and saying, you know, we're going to change things. And by golly, they did change things in a dramatic fashion, and I'm really impressed. My hat's off to them. God save the Queen.
Amen. Amen.
Plus they're 8 for 14 on third downs.